The SV08 is already a fast printer, but its entire motion system still relies on narrow 6mm belts. So today I'm rebuilding the gantry around 9mm belts instead, and I want to see whether the extra stiffness actually improves resonance and motion performance. Moving to 9mm belts potentially increases stiffness, improves stability under high acceleration, and could even change the resonance behavior of the motion system. But upgrading the belts isn't just a pulley swap. The entire gantry assembly had to be redesigned. For the conversion I'm using wider 9mm GT2 belts, larger pulleys and idlers, along with a completely redesigned set of gantry parts. The motor mounts were also redesigned to support the shafts in double shear using additional bearings. That allows the system to handle higher belt tension much more comfortably, although it also requires longer shaft stepper motors. Most of the printed parts are fairly straightforward. All STLs are already oriented for printing. Printing parameters are like on the Warren parts. For the bottom parts of the XY joints, pulley carriers in the tensioners and C carriers, you need to use 3 supports. For the inserts I'm using my own insert press design, since it keeps the alignment much more consistent compared to installing them by hand. Take a look at the printables page if you want to build your own. Explaining every insert individually would honestly take forever, so I created assembly graphics instead to make the process easier to follow. I also added all the needed bolts in the graphics. On the bottom parts of the motor mounts you need to glue this little piece on. I called it the carrier, and make sure you get the right one because it has a little notch here to accommodate the heat insert. Just glue it on because this will be needed for the mount on the X-axis later. It should look just like this. I didn't want to print this in one part because there would be a lot of supports on this side and it would look kind of ugly, something like on the tensioners here. So I avoided this with separating these 2 pieces. And strength will be no problem because on the top part there is the M5 insert, and when we put these 2 together we screw right into that insert. Start to remove the gantry. Remove the tool head and the belts. In each corner there are 2 bolts you need to remove. With the upgraded motor mounts you can run stepper motors with longer shafts for the double shear support. Make sure to print my jig for the correct spacing of the motor pulleys on the shaft. When assembling the tensioners, make sure you don't forget the M3 nut in here, and on the other side it's the nut up here. The stock belt clips get reused on the new C carriers. Just remove the 2 M3 bolts and attach them to the new carriers. Make sure you got an hex key with an ballpoint, otherwise you will have a really bad time with getting these 2 bolts here on the outside out, but you can drive them all up here because here's a little bit of a cutout to remove them. And for the bottom one I noticed it's easiest if you get it all the way down here. All the new C carriers are mounted, looking good as you can see, and all that's missing right now is to get the new parts on the gantry. Everything is already assembled. So the idlers with the smooth pulleys, the X and Y joints with toothed and smooth pulleys. Pay attention to put the right one in the right position. And of course the motor mounts. Already got the cable nicely sleeved, and on top the white knob you can see is the double shear support. Let me present to you the 9mm gantry. I wasn't a fan of the blue color on the stock parts, but I have to say with the black ones it looks really nice. Next step is to put the gantry back in the printer and I have squared up everything here on the motor mounts, but on the X and Y joints I just let the bolts loose, the 2s on the top and of course the 4 on the linear rail carriage, so I can make sure that everything is square when mounted securely. Once the gantry is in, routing the belts is the next part. You need to route the belts like shown here and make sure that both belts are the same length. I recommend you start to insert the belts here on this position. The belts are in. This was probably my most dreaded task, but it was easier than expected, and I would recommend you to print such belt clamps. For that you then can properly put on your toolhead mount and trim the belts. That's the whole assembly. You just need to attach your toolhead. If you use the same motors as me, you don't need to change anything in the printer config. They will work plug and play. Of course you can tweak the run current, for example. To see whether the wider belts actually changed anything measurable, I ran some resonance tests. This isn't a perfect apples to apples comparison, since the printer is also running a different toolhead configuration now, but the resonance behavior is still interesting. The upgraded motion system definitely feels more rigid and mechanically refined overall. And honestly, 9mm belts just look much more appropriate on a machine this size. Let me know what you think about the upgrade in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, bye!